Endeavor Horizons of the Infinite. Endeavor to Push the Limits. By Elton Garr.
Captain, there are 6 ships on an intercept course with us,
Regan said, clearing away the simulation they had been running and putting the actual image on the screen. As it appeared on the screen, the energy shield of the ship in the front lit up as 2 of the 5 ships chasing it fired their weapons. All the ships were small, likely with crews of 1 or 2. The one being shot at was a highly modified scout ship that looked like it might have been rebuilt a few times over, based on the overlapping panels. But someone had taken pride in that ship.
Is that a tree painted on the side of the ship?
Regan asked.
A palm tree. Probably represents one of the nomadic tribes of the frontier. Not that anyone can keep up with them,
Mick said. Behind that ship, the 5 others were as close to identical as you could make ships, with a simple design that was only broken up by the large white circle on the side that held the logo of Vitalis Health Consortium.
Do any of those ships have enough firepower to damage the Endeavor?
I'm not sure the Vitalis ships have enough power in those weapons to damage themselves. So unless you plan on turning off the energy shields, we'll be fine,
Mick said. He was already routing power, but he hadn't turned on anything.
Put the energy shields at 70%. Someone contact those ships. And if anyone has a suggestion on how we can get them to stop shooting, I'm open to suggestions.
A low wide beam should begin to fry their systems in about 20 seconds. I can target 3 of them at a time.
And what are the odds that it kills them?
The captain asked.
5%.
Mick said.
What if I just fly the ship between them?
Regan asked.
Can you do it?
The captain asked.
Getting between them won't be hard. Staying between them could be tricky. But it will keep them from firing at each other as long as I'm there,
Regan said.
Put the reverse gravity at maximum. I don't want any accidental collisions. And ease us in, Regan. I suspect they'll decide to stop firing, but if anyone does anything stupid, I want extra reaction time. And someone get our doctor. She's our Vitalis liaison.
The ship that was being chased was hit twice more by the Vitalis ships, while Regan positioned the Endeavor and matched the speeds of the ships. She then slowly moved between the ships. Almost immediately, the Vitalis ships began to scatter, so that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to keep the Endeavor between all of them. But the other ship must have seen what was happening, because it moved in closer to the Endeavor and began a corkscrew orbit of the Endeavor, so that not only was it difficult for them to fire at him, but if they missed, they'd be guaranteed to hit the Endeavor. That wouldn't do anything to the much larger ship, but it would put the Vitalis ships in a much more awkward position in any negotiations that might happen. Assuming that the captain didn't like people shooting at his ship. A few seconds later, the Endeavor's AI said,
I have transmissions from both Vitalis Health Consortium and their target.
There were a couple of more shots, which made deciding who to talk to easy. And the captain said,
Give me the rogue ship first. And Mick, I want you to power the weapons. No need to mask the power usage.
With the damage to the Endeavor, I couldn't guarantee it was masked anyway,
Mick said, reminding the captain that while the Endeavor easily outmatched ships that were barely more than shuttles, it was still badly damaged, and they needed to be careful. It took several seconds, then a relaxed voice said,
Has anyone ever told you that you have impeccable timing?
70,000 soldiers,
Adrian said, then realized that could confuse someone who didn't know who he was, and sound like bragging to anyone who did.
I'd say 70,001, but I'm not a soldier. Just a simple cargo hauler,
He said, talking as if he were sitting around a kitchen table somewhere in the safest part of the Commonwealth, instead of being shot at by doctors in the middle of the frontier.
Perhaps we should continue this conversation after you land in our shuttle bay. And I'm sure you've been watching my weapon power up. I assure you that unlike the doctors, Our weapons won't bounce off your energy shields.
I'll dock, but I have one condition.
The man said, but his ship was already moving towards the shuttle bay doors.
What is it?
The captain asked.
I've been out here for almost 2 months, surviving on ration packs and water. I just need some food and something with caffeine in it.
You're cleared to dock,
The captain said, trying not to form an opinion of someone who he was going to sit in judgment over. Adrian was about to tell them to let him speak to the Vitalis ships when Dr. Ramsey walked onto the bridge. She was carrying her emergency medical bag. So, whoever had contacted her had avoided the uncomfortable conversation and let her think it was a medical emergency. He needed to have the crew stop doing that to her, but he still had some hope she'd figure out how much easier her life would be if she were kinder to the people on the ship. She glanced around, clearly irritated that no one was dying. Then met eyes with Adrian and said,
I assume you have a reason for wasting my time.
There are 5 Vitalis ships outside. They were attacking a 6th ship that is currently landing in our shuttle bay. As the liaison to VHC, I assumed you would want to talk to them.
She glanced around the room and then moved over to the captain's chair and sat down without asking. That was technically the correct place for her to be, since the situation log was sent to the chair, but asking was polite.
Put them on the screen,
The doctor said. As soon as she said it, the Endeavour followed the order, and a woman, about 20 with white hair pulled back and intense gray eyes and skin that wasn't so much pale as white, appeared. She leaned forward, so that her face was too close to the camera to see it all, and said,
I demand you turn Ryan Toma over to us so he can be punished for his crimes.
The doctor looked down at the data stream of what was happening for several seconds, forcing the woman to wait. She then said,
I'm assuming lead per consortium protocol. Give me a structured handoff, status, actions taken, and anything you failed to address. What?
The woman said, which more or less matched the captain's thoughts, though knowing the doctor he was less surprised.
Unless Vitalis is putting doctors in glorified fighters and sending them to the frontier, I'm the attending on this case. Now follow standard procedure before I have every one of you terminated.
The albino woman took a few seconds to gather her thoughts, and then said,
Apologies, Doctor. I didn't realize VHC medical personnel were on site. Ryan Toma is classified as a medicine thief and represents an ongoing threat to institutional interests. He is to be detained and transferred to VHC for disposition. He will remain in secured isolation aboard the Endeavour. Send the complete offense profile so we can begin processing. Also indicate whether there's any basis for psychological evaluation or quarantine measures. Yes, quarantine-level protocols are appropriate. His history of non-compliance and behavioral manipulation warrants restricted interaction until proper oversight is in place.
Tabitha isn't the type that is going to believe someone just because they're a smooth talker,
the captain said, and then took a step back from the glare that the doctor gave him.
We would like permission to dock as well,
The woman said.
Once Ryan is secured, we will authorize boarding for 2 personnel.
The doctor said. Then she added,
This interaction is concluded. Close the channel.
As soon as the channel was closed, the doctor turned to the captain and said,
I am assuming full responsibility for all negotiations under VHC authority. Secure the prisoner, search his vessel, and if there is evidence of theft, he is to be transferred into VHC custody without delay.
The captain said.
I'm sure that we'll be able to work out something.
Tabitha only slept 3 hours a night. So how did the captain interrupt it so often? This time, it was meeting a thief in the shuttle bay. She had been tempted to ask if the entire security department had fallen ill or if every drone on the ship had malfunctioned, but once she had woken up, she calmed herself. Being indispensable was part of her job, and she couldn't complain because the captain knew she was useful. Though when she walked into the shuttle bay and saw 4 drones and 3 security officers already there, she questioned why she wasn't still in bed. At the center of the small crowd was Ryan Toma, their thief. He was tall, with black hair that was pulled back, and the relaxed stance you'd expect at a dinner party, instead of when you were being arrested for stealing medical supplies.
And this must be the commander that everyone was talking about. I was always going to say it was a pleasure to meet you, but until you walked into the room, I assumed it would be a lie.
Ryan Toma, you're under arrest for the theft of Grentadine. That can't be right,
Tabitha said, reading off the tablet that held the information on the arrest.
Oh, it isn't. Of course, and if you'd like to walk me through why, I'd be thrilled to borrow that for my defense,
Ryan said, and he carefully removed the pistol at his side and handed it to one of the security officers.
Because there is no reason to steal it. I could fill your entire ship with Grentadine and still have enough of my paycheck left over to buy a new dress.
Tabitha wasn't entirely certain why her mind had gone to a dress, but she had to admit, after 2 months of being on a ship full of subordinates, talking to someone not in her chain of command was pleasant.
and looks stunning in it. Shame the argument doesn't hold out here. Still, if we're talking strategy, dinner's as good a place as any.
Has that ever actually worked?
Tabitha asked. He smiled, and she understood why it had worked for him. But she had a job to do, so she said,
I'd like permission to search your ship.
And if I say no?
Ryan asked.
We secure you, and then I search it anyway. And I probably rip things apart more to find anything you've hidden.
Well, let's not do that. You're welcome to look. Just check the loose panel on the left, 3 back from the pilot's seat. Should save you some time.
So you're admitting to having the contraband?
I'm admitting there's Grentadine on board, sure. But contraband? Out here. Please. The frontier doesn't have rules, just opinions. And for the record, I didn't steal a thing. The medicine was bought, and I've got the paperwork to prove it.
Tabitha very nearly made him go in and open the panel himself. But everything about him suggested he planned on walking free. The ship was small, but not so small that there weren't 100 places you could hide things. And while she might have found the panel without his advice, she would have had to take apart half of the ship to do it. Because while he said it was loose to get it to open, she had to reach in between 2 small gaps, find a tiny latch and pull it. That allowed her to slide out part of the panel, where she found the actual door to the compartment. There were 6 bottles of Grentadine. That wouldn't pay for the fuel cost of one of those shuttles that had been chasing him. There was something more going on in this. She grabbed the bottles and handed them to a security officer, who had to holster his weapon to take them. Tabitha said,
Secure the evidence in one of the security lockers. And someone put a security lock on that ship.
As she turned to lead their guest to the quarters where he would be kept, she practically walked into Chaplain Ulster. He grinned as he saw her and said,
I couldn't help but overhear that we have a guest on board.
It's a pleasure to meet a spirit keeper,
Ryan said, offering his hand like he already knew how this was supposed to go. The spirit keeper didn't reciprocate. Instead he said,
I came in case you felt the need for spiritual guidance. As you know, VHC considers theft of medical supplies to be roughly the same level of crime as attempted murder.
Tabitha knew that the laws of the Commonwealth were flexible, but treating someone as a murderer for what was a petty crime seemed overboard, and she said,
That seems excessive.
Out here, even the cheap stuff turns into life or death. Do you know what Grentadine does?
Ryan asked.
Detox. It clears hormone waste. I took it after my first strength mod.
Right, but it's not just augmentations. A lot of these colonies are built on worlds that aren't as stable as the reports claim. You breathe it in for a couple years, and suddenly your liver doesn't work like it used to. Grentadine keeps people alive until they can't get it.
Which is why VHC sends shipments of Grentadine, and why they're willing to chase down the people stealing it,
Tabitha said. Her tone made it clear she knew who was on the right side of this issue.
And do you think they charge the same rate out here as they do in the Commonwealth?
Ulster asked from behind her. She had nearly forgotten he was there. He wasn't wrong. The Frontier ran on different math. Shipping costs, yes, but more than that. Most of the people in the Frontier didn't use Commonwealth credits.
I'm sure there's a surcharge for delivery.
Then let me ask it another way.
The Spirit Keeper said.
How much would you pay not to die? Or to keep your child from dying slowly and in pain?
A pause, just long enough to let it land.
I imagine that's what VHC charges.
Tabitha wasn't sure when she started defending VHC. They sold survival one pill at a time and priced it like a luxury. That was why she worked for Helix. Helix didn't treat symptoms, they eliminated them. If VHC wanted to chase down smugglers, fine. Helix would do the actual work so that there was nothing to smuggle.
And just for fun, they slipped in a clause that makes resale illegal. So some handsome, brilliant guy buys the meds, brings them out here to help people, and suddenly he's a thief.
Ryan said. Tabitha couldn't decide if he was being careful or just clever, but he hadn't admitted to anything. Only implied what the actual situation was.
Either way, we need to clear the room. The Vitalis reps are docking,
She said.
I'll walk with you if you don't mind.
Edric said. She didn't trust religious types and didn't see the point. The Spirit Keeper didn't talk like them. He talked about Helix. About rewriting genes. Cleaning up the code. Stronger bodies, smarter minds. Not faith, just progress. The kind she believed in. The rooms closest to the center of the ship were all full, so it took about 5 minutes to walk Ryan Toma to the room that the captain had assigned to him. There were already 2 drones there, who were disabling most of the door mechanisms. That, along with the drones themselves, would make sure that he didn't escape.
Would you mind if I stayed and talked?
Edric asked, looking not at Ryan, but at Tabitha.
Do what you want, but if anything goes wrong, you're on your own,
Tabitha said. She didn't think that Ryan was the type to take a hostage, but people who weren't what they appeared to be were almost always the most dangerous. The 2 stood in the doorway as she walked away. When she was far enough away that a normal human couldn't hear, Ryan said,
So you're going by Edric. Well, I never expected to see you out here.
The door slammed shut. Tabitha almost turned back to confront them. But for now, knowing they were both lying was going to have to be enough. Author's note.
This one is a bit shorter than normal. That's because I wanted an ending that felt interesting, and the reveal that Edric and Ryan knew each other was a good place to stop. I hope you all enjoyed it, and the next episode should be available on Patreon, though I will admit I may be a tiny bit behind. Thank you. Elton Gar.